Alrighty, we'll go ahead and get started. We see some people trickling in. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for our next professional growth series. Today, we're talking about communication skills, and we've got Laura and Aaron from DeVry again hosting us this morning and taking us through this great presentation. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you to DeVry for continuing to host webinar series for us. We're so excited to continue the series. Just a couple of quick reminders. We're going to be recording this webinar, and we also will be sending out a post-event email with the presentation as well as the recording, as well as our speakers' contact info. So you can continue any conversation that you'd like, or connect with them for any questions. We highly encourage you guys to use the chat this morning. As you guys can see, we're talking about communication skills. So we think it'd be really beneficial for you guys to be, including yourselves in the chat and asking any questions or comments. We will make time for Q&A at the end of the webinar, about 10 minutes or so, but we have an hour total for our presenters to be able to present and engage with you guys. Another fun announcement is that we're raffling off 2 Diamondbacks tickets for the game on the 16th against the Cubs. So for each attendee here, we'll go ahead and enter your guys' name into a raffle and then announce the winners at the end of the webinar. You will have to be present in order for you guys to receive the tickets. But we look forward to seeing who are the winners of that. And yeah, if anything else, if you'd like to unmute to ask questions at the end, please just raise your hand or go ahead and ask in the chat. But I think that's it for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it over to Aaron and Laura. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. And those Diamondback versus Cubs tickets, I want in on that raffle. That's the home team for me. But anyhow, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Laura and I are super excited to be back with you this morning. We kicked off last month with 2 important topics, resolving workplace conflict and then managing through change. And with both of those topics, they had a huge focus on communication. And so today we have the opportunity to go deeper on the subject of communication. So as we were previously stating, please make sure you engage via the chat. It will make sure that, it enriches this experience today and allows for us to bounce ideas off of each other and learn from one another. So now let's take a moment and think about your morning routine. What is the first thing you do in the morning? I know for me, I'm instantly grabbing the phone, even though I'm trying to make a habit of, starting the morning off with meditation, getting my mind right, but we're not programmed that way. Because there's a study from the IDC research that found that 80% of smartphone users check their mobile devices within the first 15 minutes of waking up each morning, which I just stated I'm guilty of. So we wake up immediately and we start thinking about emails we need to send, articles we need to read, or the latest hashtag trend that started overnight. So it's truly unavoidable to escape the way communication drives our day from the beginning. Communication is everywhere. Today, together, we are going to participate in a communication skills workshop. And this workshop is designed to give you a couple key takeaways that you can implement immediately to strengthen your communication skills, both written and verbal. Our goal is to help you communicate more effectively with greater clarity and confidence. So today we will look at several key areas of communication. We'll begin by talking about how to communicate effectively as we navigate so many options to stay connected. Then we'll look at examples to help us set the tone in our written communication, how to create more effective messaging. We'll also talk about building verbal communication as well as nonverbal communication and how they work together. And then there may be a few of you in the workshop today that are thinking about how education can be used to enhance your skill set to grow with your organization. So we'll take a little time at the end to share our contact information so that if you have some ideas or questions about how you can further your education with DeVry University, we are here to definitely assist you. And then when you leave here today, you will have looked at some challenges of miscommunication and determined ways in which to improve our own communication. We will have identified some best practices with regard to written communication, especially email, And lastly, we will have discussed and identified some key takeaways for improved nonverbal communication and the art of listening. I would also, again, like to reinforce that today's workshop is all about you. Your participation, your experiences, and your personal best practices will enhance everyone's experience. So please share as much as possible via the chat or unmute yourselves and chime in. We really want to hear from you throughout this workshop. So let's begin with a question. How many forms of communication do you use in your workplace every day? Let's talk about the noise. Please feel free to unmute yourselves or again, put it in the chat. I know one is the IMs via Teams. It's on the moment we turn our computers on at DeVry. Yes, Liz, texting.
Yeah. Read the text that I sent. Naomi, Sarada, and Luisa. Just read it and then read the response that Naomi sends back. And tell me if you don't understand that.
Okay, Christina, I think you're unmuted.
Sorry about that, guys. We'll go ahead and mute.
But yeah, email, definitely. We talked about that's the first thing many of us tend to check with the first 15 minutes of waking up. We have Zoom and WebEx. Bobby, yes, face-to-face, even though many of us have been limited in that area in the last year. But you have text messages, you have cell phone calls, IMs via Skype, Teams, WebEx, Zoom. These are all great insights. And I think our key takeaway is that we are more connected than ever. There's plenty of ways for somebody to find us if they need to communicate with us. Yes, the desk phone, Laura, I forgot about that one. But with that said, with all those different ways to reach someone and communicate with them, it's very easy to miscommunicate. Communication can become overwhelming. One of the main reasons why communication fails is that it becomes overwhelming. For many employees, there are simply too many messages relayed through too many channels. We just listed 7. Consider one of the main culprits of overwhelming communication, the email. It's a communication channel that can be used effectively, but it's easy to get into the habit of sending an email instead of speaking to someone or making phone calls. As well as email, another ineffective communication method is meetings. Poorly planned meetings, discussions without a purpose, and too many meetings all contribute to feeling overwhelmed by communication. To avoid this, set a clear agenda, review it at the beginning of the meeting, and don't stray from it. On the other side of the spectrum, inconsistency is also a source of communication problems. When teams come to expect a monthly meeting or a weekly bulletin email, it can be confusing and demotivating if these suddenly change without warning. Communication can also be inconsistent from one manager to a number of employees, prompting individuals to feel as though their contributions or suggestions aren't as valued as those of others. A lack of clear, open, and regular communication can lead to difficulties in teams understanding your core values, achieving progress, and contributing their ideas and opinions. Communication can be unclear in a number of ways. One of the most common is sending reactive, unplanned messages instead of planning what to say and structuring it in a way that's easy to understand and communicates all points accurately. Another failure is not including enough detail. This can be especially important when talking about projects where details and data are critical to following progress. A third example of unclear messaging is not knowing the audience or not selecting the right audience based on who needs to know what. We will talk more about this one shortly. And yet another major source of communication failure in business is the use of unnecessary technical jargon. Confusing language and unapproachable acronyms make it hard for employees to have a clear understanding of the whole message. Businesses that keep language simple will find it much easier to communicate effectively with employees and the wider community. Another tactic to miscommunication, many people struggle to actively listen and digest the information that someone else has provided. This can lead to difficulty in following a conversation or keeping up with progress on a project. Where there is too much talking and not enough listening, this can lead to heated moments or difficulty in achieving compromise. For communication to succeed, listening must play an important role. And lastly, while trust can take a long time to build in a business, it can easily be broken and difficult to repair. Employees may have a lack of trust within a business for several reasons. This could be due to being let down in the past by promises which have yet to be fulfilled. For example, a Q&A session with the CEO that never materialized. Team members may also feel distance from management or other teams due to a lack of transparency, especially if they have taken an interest in company culture or a specific project that was met with silence. What are some of the ways you have experienced miscommunication in the workplace? I know email is a big one for me. I've received too many emails and the message has been lost. Yep, I agree, Laura. Many.
Where do we start, right?
Yes, Bobby, one-sided text and emails from your supervisor. Yes. Good point, Nicole. Assuming responses. And I tend to feel that happens when people aren't actively listening. They're assuming what it is that you're saying to them because they're not paying any attention to you. Amber, we have shared experiences. Thank you all so much for sharing all of this. But let's begin to look for ways to keep our communication simple. Any communication always starts with knowing your audience and their point of view. After all, you are writing to them, not to yourself. Remember that they don't know what you know, and you may have a very different perspective. Ask yourself, who am I communicating with? Know their title, their function, and gain some perspective. What do they need to know? Prioritize the information you are sharing so the most important facts come first. Why is this information important to them? This is important to understand. It will help you with the next question, which is, how do you send the message? So now we're going to do an exercise. It's a game called Set Your Tone. I really wouldn't call it a game, but for the purposes of this, we'll do it. I'm going to start with a sentence, and I want you all to finish it. Go ahead and put in the chat. It's not what you say, but it's. Yes, Amber, you hit the nail on the head. It's not what you say, but it's how you say it. So now we're going to do an exercise. Again, set the tone, because we want to be cognizant of how our messages are being perceived and how they're coming across. The way you use tone in your written communications may ring louder and have a larger impact than your words. For example, you want to come across professional. You don't want to sound condescending. You don't want anything too personal or give too much information. You don't want to come off aggressive. And you want to be as genuine and authentic as possible. Let's look at our first example. We're going to start with an easy one. Thanks versus THX, or yes versus yep. Who has been guilty of, because I know in text messages, we tend to shorten our words. Who has been guilty of using those shortened words in business communication? I know it's happened to a few of us. And then you catch yourself and you're like, oh, this isn't professional. This can come off too casual and, again, like I just said, make you seem unprofessional. You want to make sure you're spelling out the words and using them properly. Good one, Laura. In business writing with heart, how to build great work relationships one message at a time. Lynn Gartner Johnson says, wording things positively helps build relationships. So you want to make sure you're positive in your tone. She gives the following example. You can't use the conference room until my meeting ends, versus as soon as we wrap up the meeting, the room is all yours. Two completely different tones there. She suggests using words and phrases such as please, opportunity, happy to, thank you, and looking forward. Here's another tone issue, being too flowery. A common tone problem is being too flowery. In the following sentence, the sender was following up on a previous request in a roundabout way to avoid asking outright. Compare, may I kindly ask if you had a chance to review the template I previously sent, attached for your easy reference, versus, can you please review the template I sent you last week, which is a far more direct ask without all of the extra nicety words. We, again, don't want our message to get lost in trying to be too nice. Not that there's a problem with being nice, but there was a lot of extra verbiage that was there that wasn't needed. Yes, Amber, passive versus active language. Very good point. Avoiding emoticons. I know I have personally been guilty of this one. Emoticons can become an unprofessional crutch to use in email communication. Often the sender will decide something sounds too harsh and insert a smiley face at the end of the sentence to appease the reader. Not only is this lazy, it can also be perceived as condescending in a business sense. In this situation, it is best to simply rephrase your original sentence. Emoticons can also be perceived as inappropriate in a business relationship. While a winky face emoticon may be considered as cheeky and harmless to the sender, the recipient may interpret that same winky face as offensive and inappropriate. So then we ask, when is it okay or effective to use your emoticons and emojis? I know for me personally, if it's someone that I have a personal friendship with, even though we work together and we're bouncing emails back and forth, I am guilty of sending a smiley face or, a laughing face rolling over to the side. But I would never send that to a new client or someone that I don't have that personal connection with in the business community. Anybody else have any insight on those? I know that passive language Amber mentioned, I have been, because I do think that sometimes some of my language can be too direct or stern and people may not necessarily perceive it as me just being direct and they may be offended. I have been guilty of putting a smiley face at something to try to soften it up. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Thank you, Amber. And then Laura's going to take us through the next set on set the tone. Laura, all yours.
Thank you so much, Erin. Yeah, you're definitely not alone. I think all of us can fall into these, I don't want to say traps, but maybe habits. And there's always a way to, I think, lift up and make our communication more clear and more professional. And it's just about remembering and I think being aware of certain things and how they can be potentially perceived. And I'm going to talk about the tone, setting the tone for an apology. This one's tricky, right? None of us is perfect. Sometimes problems happen, challenges come up. Sometimes the big oops is because of maybe something we did, or didn't do. And so we always want to strike the tone of professionalism while always being transparent and accountable, right? So that's a tricky one. And sometimes in business, we see people maybe they feel like they need to be overly apologetic to the point where it almost becomes self-deprecating. And we want to always maintain our dignity, right? While maintaining that accountability as well and keeping that communication, going back and forth. So we're avoiding defensiveness, right? We're avoiding being overly self-deprecating. And a lot of times it's just word choice, like for instance, on this slide, saying something like, good call, looks like an oversight on my end. Let's say you didn't turn in a report on time, or there was a typo, or there was some wrong information. Good call. Thank you for the correction. Looks like an oversight. Thank you. Versus, oh my goodness, I apologize. How could I have missed that? Sometimes you see this professionally. How could I have done that? That's so, oh, duh. Things like that. So we want to always, strike that balance with the word choice. And actually, there's a recommendation by leadership consultant Jennifer Davis. She's written and presented a lot about an approach. And I think this is really appropriate, especially if you're a business owner or you're in a capacity where you have clients, and something goes wrong. Maybe many of us have been in that situation where something goes wrong. And again, none of us is perfect and things happen. And you want to strike the right tone, with your client. And her approach is, you may want to jot it down, or I'll type it here. It's apologize, acknowledge, explain, and then action. Apologize, acknowledge, explain, and action. And so first the apology comes. Let's say you're late, you're extremely late to a meeting. There was a huge traffic accident on the way. So you apologize when you get there, right? Hopefully you're keeping folks, now we have thank you so much for typing that in. Yes. We have our smartphones, we're keeping everybody in the loop, but basically saying very simply, oh my gosh, I am so sorry for being late, for being 10 minutes late. And then we want to acknowledge, especially with clients, we want to let them know that we know how this has impacted their day. Okay, I realize this may throw a monkey wrench in your schedule if we have to go 10 or 15 minutes after, or later. And I'm not sure if you're, stacked up with meetings. So, let's see how we can adjust schedules. And I'm happy, to work on that with you. You do want to explain, but never so it seems like an excuse. Yet you do want to share your perspective, right? I think it's natural to say, there was this huge accident on the way. That said, I should have left earlier. I should have given time for that mishap. And then the action is, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about it? Is there any adjustment to the meeting content or agenda that I can make? Can I shorten my presentation a little bit? Can we reschedule, kind of the last half of the meeting? Maybe I'm going to take them out to lunch, right? Maybe why don't we schedule the last half of the meeting over lunch next week? It's my treat. Okay, so thank you, Nicole, for typing that. Yeah. Apologize, acknowledge, explain, I think that's fair. And then what is the action? And I would say, definitely where clients are involved. And I also like to always say, we all have clients, whether or not we're a business owner, I have clients, right? My internal clients, right, are people that I'm promising work to and promising different things to. And so I think we all have clients. And so this approach, apologize, acknowledge, explain, action, is a good one to keep in mind. On the next slide, I just want to summarize. I think we've already gone over, quite a lot of material. How do we set that tone? There's so many benefits. And I think we assume we know what those benefits are, but really just to spell them out here, clear communication results in improved efficiency at work or with our clients. Why? Because we're reducing those misunderstandings that have to be explained out. It's a time waste. Misunderstandings, miscommunications, they can cause conflict. At the very worst, they can cause big problems and conflict at work. That, oh my gosh, that can be a time suck that takes away from the productivity at work. And even if it's a 5-minute or 10-minute delay or miscommunication, it takes time. Okay, so we want to always be efficient and be doing the best that we can do at work and moving forward, with deadlines and everything else. And so clear and effective communication improves efficiency. It does result in better employee morale. Erin was alluding to some of the problems that can decrease employee morale, and they were communication issues, right? So we can build, this is an easy and really it's a free way to build morale by keeping everyone in the loop. People like to feel like they're on the same page. Nobody likes surprises. So I think getting into the routine of clear and effective communication with our colleagues, with our teams, whether or not we're the team lead, how can we get into that habit, of clear and consistent communication? It can build innovation, right? Because the more people, and this is kind of related to the prior point, the more people feel, right, that they are on the same page and that they can share thoughts and ideas, that it's a two-way, right? It's not just top down or one-sided. If they feel confident that they're able to feed back, any ideas or questions or collaborate, that actually increases innovation. And don't we want to be don't we want to be innovators in a way, or be on an innovative team, or be part of an innovative company, or come up with new innovations for our clients, right? So we can actually increase innovation through clear and effective communication. And we're breaking down barriers. Why? Because of those active listening skills. And so we're breaking down those barriers of us versus them. Oh my gosh, accounting versus product, marketing versus sales, right? The account team versus the product team, right? The more that back and forth communication can exist and the more we foster it, we're breaking down barriers and we're getting on the same team. We're staying on the same team. We're collaborating and we're helping our clients and each other. What other benefits, I guess? Yeah, what other benefits? And I'm just reading here, Bobby. Okay. Yep, exactly. Don't let a problem fester. Don't hope it will go away. Talk to your people. Absolutely. Because those festering problems, they can take months, they can take weeks, they can take months, they can take years, out of the productivity at your organization. So just always keeping that back and forth, keeping that back and forth going in a very thoughtful way, and keeping the listening, keeping our listening ears on, the active listening, skills very honed. Any other thoughts about the benefits of clear and effective communication?
I definitely agree on that increased innovation. I mean, people are more apt to, come up with new ideas and be engaged in work when they feel like they, are being heard and, just listened to, like they're being, respected and received.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just, keeping that back and forth going. Innovation, motivation, buy-in, it's all related. Employee morale, it just elevates everything, I think, at the workplace. And as a business owner or employee of a large business, it just elevates everything. So let's keep moving on. We have a couple of, I guess, techniques and tactics, strategies that can be employed to make verbal, nonverbal, and written communication successful. So I'm going to start with written communication. Written communication, as Erin was saying, it's so much a part of our day. We were talking about the emails going back and forth, like so many emails, and then text. This is all written communication. Text, IM, right? Sending, oh my gosh, I guess Zoom and WebEx and Teams would be verbal communication, but there's a lot of written communication going on throughout the day. Okay, so we're going to look at a common example where written communication can go wrong. I'm going to start with a bad email, since email is, such a part of our day. And I just, without really reading this, too deeply, feel free to if you'd like, but just at first glance, have any of you received an email? At first glance, to me, this is something that I almost, oh my gosh, I almost don't want to read. I'm going to admit it. I almost don't want to read, because I glance at it, I glance the subject, I kind of, it's not penetrating my mind. I'm not understanding very quickly what this email is about. And exactly, it's kind of like my eyes are burning, they're kind of dulling. And it's like this one long paragraph. And normally you want to glance the subject line and get a sense of what is this. You want to see more white space, to be honest, right? And so I'm sure many of you, I guess I'll just ask, raise your hand, or let me know, have any of you received emails like this? Have any of you been on the receiving end, of an email like this? Yeah, rolling eyes emoji. Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm sure all of us can attest, to having received something like this. Yeah, yeah. These are unreadable. These are the ones where you may be complaining, you may be in your mind going, how come nobody responds to my emails? I didn't get a response on this or that email. Gosh, why are these people not? Sometimes it does have to do, it's a harder to read. The way it's been set up unintentionally, right? It's just a harder to read email quickly. You can't quickly get at it. Okay, so some of us, I guess, and I'll ask, and raise your hand, anybody, have any of us been guilty of sending an email like this, potentially? Right? Hopefully not. Never, right? Oh, never, never, ever. Right, never, never, ever. So yeah, let's make sure. Let's absolutely make sure that we are never guilty of sending emails like this. A lot of issues with this one, including grammar. I think the first sentence there is not even a complete sentence. There needs to be a comma or a dash or something connecting it with something else. So grammar does matter, right? A lot of us have downloaded Grammarly, or we get into the habit of rereading, double checking, always rereading, anything that we send. That's more than, maybe one sentence, right? A quick response to something. And even then, sometimes, a misspelling or a grammatical thing that you just mistyped can really throw off the meaning of what you put down. And then you're wondering, how come they're not responding to me? And you read what you sent and it's like, oh my gosh, maybe because it makes no sense. Right. So I think rereading, double checking, triple checking, reading from the bottom to the top, these are all techniques that you've probably learned along the way, over the years. Grammar definitely matters. Punctuation, right? I think there's a question mark here that really shouldn't even be there. So we want to just keep an eye on that. Email is a huge part of our workday and our lives. So I have a couple of other suggestions on how we can kind of clean up, this email and make it into something very, very readable. And it's actually, there's a technique, I've talked about several techniques that I'm sure you employ. There's actually a technique, the acronym is PASS. And you can use this with your emails if you just memorize PASS, P-A-S-S. P stands for purpose. What is the purpose of your communication in the first place? Let's get very clear on what our intention is, and what action is involved? What outcome do we want? What action are we asking for? What do we need somebody else to do? Or maybe we're just informing that person on something, but what is the outcome? What is the action that's involved? What supporting documentation is included? Should supporting documentation be included either as an attachment or bullet points? Sometimes you'll refer to something very high level and then somebody just responds back saying, well, I need to see that supporting documentation. So kind of putting some foresight and a little bit of hard work up front into thinking, what can I include that would be supporting my ask here or getting my purpose, making my purpose more clear. Okay, so supporting. And then the next S is basically have we summarized, appropriately and effectively our communication via the subject line. The subject line is really a way for you to condense exactly, what you're looking to get forth. You want to clarify the meaningful objective or the project that this email message is related to. If you can fit it in, you want to clearly indicate the action requested. Sometimes that action is just FYI. I just want you to read this. I don't want you to forward it. I don't want you to respond. I just want you to read it and, file it away. FYI only. That could go actually in the subject line. You may say, if it's something urgent, you may say, please respond. Right? Please respond. Put that in the subject line. Don't put that at the end of the email. People may not get there, fast enough to realize. Okay. So go ahead and make sure that your subject line is very clear in terms of what is this email related to? What are you looking to get done? What is the reaction that you need? Okay. Also keep in mind using the CC, right? The CC, the BCC, the two lines effectively. Sometimes we're on a massive email, and hitting reply all is maybe not the best thing to do necessarily. We want to maybe reply to one person, or maybe we remove people to BCC. So really making good use of those different fields is also important. So let's take a look at this email, our Florida Seals, whatever it was about. Now it's been cleaned up using the past method, and now it's much more clear, right in the subject line. And I think there are actually things, honestly, that we could do to make this even a little bit tighter. But right here in the subject line, funding the Florida Seals project. Okay, so I kind of get a sense of this is about funding. It's the Florida Seals project, and it's about the funding. So, from there, I should know what this email is about. There's plenty of white space, right? The questions are bulleted out. I love bullets, right? Bullets, numbering, let's bullet it out. Let's not have it all, in this huge chunk of text. And then at the end, and see, here's where I would maybe even edit it. I would have put the ask in the beginning. I would almost put the ask in the beginning. After meeting with the CEO to discuss funding, we do need to schedule another meeting because we have questions. These are the questions. Let us know when you're available. Okay, so Aaron, I think, mentioned put the important stuff in the beginning. And if you need a meeting, if you have a major ask, I would actually kind of fit that into the beginning as opposed to the end. But that said, this is hopefully you agree, much more clear, much more readable than that chunk of text that we showed you earlier. Any other comments on this email, or any other suggestions that you would have for the author of this email, for Sue? Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Much more readable. So I think considering that we as human beings are, I think, visual creatures, right? So pushing a bunch of text out, not visually, it's unappealing, and those are the emails that don't get read. So if we can chunk them out and almost have a design eye, can this email also all be read on the screen that's available to us, or do I have to scroll down past the fold? That's another thing that I think about sometimes, right? Can we get it all in that top half of the screen? Yeah, and confusion breeds more confusion, panic. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting. Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Poor communication breeds more poor communication. So sometimes you almost want to stop, kind of stop that downward spiral and just pick up the phone. If you see an email trail or email chain that's going really south, that's definitely when you want to pick up the phone and say, hey, just want to make sure we're on the same page and I'm understanding everything. And maybe you can just end that email chain, and start something new, start something fresh, schedule a meeting, do something else, right? Change the trajectory a little bit. We'll talk about a few more email etiquette tips. There's so many, and probably I'm sure you're going to have some as well for us. Feel free to share them via chat. Knowing your audience is key. Are you emailing a team member? Are you emailing your manager? Are you emailing a client? Are you emailing somebody who knows exactly what you're talking about, or somebody who may need a bit more background and clarity and things being spelled out? Clarifying your why. Always, what do you need as a result of this communication? And even like, is email necessary, right? Could I pick up the phone? Is IM going to be more appropriate for this, or even a quick text, right? Consider your channel. Should I set up a Zoom meeting or a WebEx or Teams meeting to talk this through, or just pick up the phone? Always reread. And I'm just, when I don't reread, that's always when there's like those minor typos that the word is spelled correctly, but not in the context. You know what I mean? So I always reread from top to bottom, bottom to top, maybe even a couple of times if it's if it's a long, email. Hopefully we're not sending too many long emails. If something is heated, or if you feel that it may be heated, okay, or if you feel like you don't understand, what this email is about and you're about to react, practice the 24-hour rule. I don't know if anybody's learned that the hard way. I certainly have, right? Honestly speaking, the 24-hour rule, and maybe it's not even a full 24 hours, but it's like, yeah, I got something and I'm just going to sleep on it. I'm just going to think about this. Maybe I will write my response. I'm going to go ahead and write the response as a draft. And I'm going to reread my response in the morning before I send it. How's that? And invariably, the response that I end up sending is hugely different. Usually it's a lot briefer, right? It's not this like train of thought, long response with so much detail. In the morning, at least for me, I'm more of a morning person. My mind is clear and I can really clarify and hone down exactly what that response is. And I kind of, that tone can kind of settle in and I maybe understand it more. And again, if I don't understand the tone, definitely that's when you're picking up the phone, or setting up a meeting, and saying, hey, I want to make sure we're on the same page regarding this. So yeah, any incendiary or kind of, where the tone is a little bit off. And then avoiding shortcuts and abbreviations, point number 5. Yeah, shortcuts and abbreviations and biz, email, messages, again, especially with clients, right? We want to spell things out, or especially if we're, wanting to make that professional impression, we're avoiding shortcuts and acronyms and the whatever, the LOL or BRB, OMG, right? All of the little shortcuts, which absolutely use with your colleagues or, Erin and I for sure, but any client, probably not so much, right? When in doubt, always steer or veer to go more professional, if that makes sense. Okay. Any questions? I know you all have suggestions for us and for the group. Feel free to share your email etiquette tips via chat. I would love to see. Yeah, definitely. 24-hour rule is a must. I wish I learned it earlier in my career, but again, sometimes, right, we learn things the hard way. And so, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, feel free to continue to share. I'm sure you all have, many good, kind of items or tips. We're going to transition though right now to verbal communication and what makes verbal communication successful. And Erin will kick us off there. Erin?
Thank you, Laura. So yes, what does make verbal communication successful? Remember, we talked about how to send your messages and setting the tone. Written communication may not always be the best way to communicate the message you need to send. Laura mentioned that earlier. Sometimes when we're getting ready to send those emails, is it better to go and pick up the phone and call that person? Is it better to send a quick IM? Will a text message suffice? Oops. Sorry about that. And verbal communication skills may not get as much attention. We have to understand, how do you prefer to communicate? We always ask the question, who likes chatting on the phone? I know I'm a huge texter. And that may be the case for, many of my generation, but, I am, if it's something that could be asked or answered via text, do not call me. If you had a problem or issue, how would you quickly resolve the matter? Would you use email, IM, or would you set a meeting? For example, we have to, in understanding our audience and how best to, get those verbal cues across, read the nonverbal cues from your audience and who you're speaking with, listening, paying attention to your tone, the body language and eye contact of the person that you're communicating with. These are great insights, especially in the digital age of smartphones, social media, text, emails, and instant messages. Communication has become faster and easier than ever, but for all the advancements in that technology, nothing can quite replace the impact of face-to-face communication in the workplace. And while I'm sure we all missed the interpersonal interaction this last year, it has actually shown us that it is very, very important in reading verbal cues in the virtual world when people have access to you in various forms. Now let's talk about how to build our verbal communication skills. Effective speaking. It involves three main areas: the words you choose, how you say them, and how you reinforce them with other nonverbal communication. All these affect the transmission of your message and how it is received and understood by your audience. It is worth considering your choice of words carefully. We have just, been constantly revisiting setting the tone. That is an important message in verbal and nonverbal communication. You will probably need to use different words in different situations, even when discussing the same subject. For example, what you say to a close colleague will be very different from how you present a subject at a major conference. How you speak includes your tone of voice and pace. Like nonverbal communication, more generally, these send important messages to your audience. For example, about how your level of interest and communication is, or whether you are nervous about their reaction. So now let's look at the power of nonverbal communication. Laura? You are nice and muted.
Thank you, Erin. Sorry about that. So yeah, diving into nonverbal communication, this slide is showing the results of, it was the Morabian and Ferris study on nonverbal communication. And according to their research, I mean, you see it right here, it's spoken words convey about 7% of the message. So the spoken word, the word choice, yes, is important. 93% of the communication is voice. It's your tone. Okay, it's your body language, things like eye contact, gestures, physical expressions, your posture, any mannerisms that you have. It's also listening skills. And you want to make sure that your body language is always congruent with the messages that you're working to get across. Okay, so that's why, rule of thumb, you never want to laugh or smile if you're delivering very important or serious, or huge impact type information, right? If there's a serious matter at hand, and sometimes it's hard, you get nervous and it's like, oh my gosh, you just want to laugh to break the tension. And actually it's not a good practice. You want to definitely be aligned in terms of your body language, your voice, your tone, your spoken words, the situation at hand. Right? If you're trying to convey, excellent listening skills to somebody who's reporting to you or to your client, you don't want to be necessarily checking out your phone. And maybe there's an emergency going on, at home, or something that really is pulling you away. I mean, and in that case, it's a tough call. Sometimes it is better to say, can we reschedule so I can give you my 100% attention? And then actually give them that attention. Don't bring your phone in with you, turn it over, put it on silent mode, etc. So nonverbal communication, it's huge. And the problem is that sometimes a lot of this can be unconscious. And so we have no idea what message we may actually be projecting. So it's tough, but I think it starts with self-awareness, right? It starts with self-awareness, kind of checking in with yourself, seeing how you feel, and making sure that that language, that tone of voice, maybe you're very tired, maybe you're exhausted, maybe you're stressed, right? Just be aware of it, especially if you're presenting or you're talking with a client or you're conveying some very, very important information, right? Make sure that everything is aligned. Active listening is a part of nonverbal communication, and it's huge, right? It's an art, it's a science. It's a very, very important, part of communication. I just want to take an informal poll via chat. How many of you, on a scale of 1 to 10, I guess, how many of you would be a 9, 10? How many of you, who of you are excellent listeners, or you consider yourselves excellent listeners, 9s, 10s? Feel free to share. I would love to, we'd love to hear your tips and tricks, kind of what your approach is for excellent listening. Okay. 8.5. Okay. Okay, very good. Yeah, Erin listens a lot. Nicole, 8.5. Amber is being honest. Okay, fair enough. And I think most of us know, right? As adults, maybe somebody has told us, oh my gosh, or maybe a spouse or friend, don't, we should have a good sense of, are we good listeners? Are we preoccupied? We're somewhere else. We're thinking of other things. And it's tough to empty out and truly be a good listener. In short, good listeners use active listening techniques and tactics, right? They're going to listen to hear rather than listening to figure out what they're going to say. Okay, they're going to watch body language, not only their own, but the people around them. They're going to look and seek to find common ground. They may paraphrase the speaker's words back to him or her as a question. I hear you saying this. Is this what you're getting at? You want to suspend your own frame of reference and your own your own judgment, right? Your own perspective, and get into that person's perspective and frame of reference and understand it so you can find that common ground. You want to validate what the speaker is saying, right? Try not to tear them, try to be supportive, I guess. If somebody's feeling angry, try to feel supportive. Don't judge it out of hand immediately. It's interesting. Harvard Business Review published an article with some research, and it was very interesting because according to this article, they said most people actually consider good active listening to be the following things: not speaking when others are speaking. And I don't know where we all learned this, but this is what most people think active listening is. Don't speak when somebody's speaking with you. Okay, you're silent. You may be going like, you may be nodding your head, going, smiling and kind of nodding your head. And maybe at the end of this conversation, you're going to repeat verbatim what the person has said, practically word for word. And actually, according to research, this is not active listening, and this does not lead to a good exchange of ideas. Good listening truly is much more than being silent when the other person talks, right? It's listening, but it's also coming back to that person with some questions just to check, that you understand what they're getting at. Okay, it includes interactions that build the person's self-esteem. Okay, maybe you don't agree with a person, but somehow you don't want to tear down their position or them personally, even if you don't agree with them. We want to help build each other up and build that trust, especially with very sensitive communications or tough communications. Let's build up the trust so we can have a better flow of information. It's more of a cooperative conversation. Good listening, according to this article and this research published by Harvard Business Review, is more of a cooperation. It is more of a back and forth. And good listeners actually do make suggestions. And I know, sometimes people laugh at the, in like marital situations, it's like you're giving advice. Maybe it's not that you're giving advice always to solve a problem, but giving suggestions is absolutely a-okay and shows, the other participant in this conversation that you have been listening and that you are being thoughtful about it. So good listening, it's more about being a trampoline. Think about yourself. Think about being a trampoline, someone to bounce ideas off of, as opposed to being a sponge. I'm just taking in everything that you're saying, soaking it in. I mean, that's part of it. But we're also wanting to be like trampolines where we're allowing that other person to kind of go higher, right? Go higher with their thoughts and their ideas. So yeah, in wrapping up, I know we're almost at time. According to author George Bernard Shaw, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion it has taken place. Here we are, we're talking, we're texting, we're IMing, we're emailing, we're meeting, we're so much conversation going on in communication, but is it communication at the end of the day? And that's the goal of this presentation, to elevate our communication, to make it more clear so that we are getting our point across and that others can get their point across with us so that we can have, a bigger impact in what we do on our day-to-day. I'm going to pass it over to Erin to wrap us up. Erin?
Thank you so much, Laura. So some of you may be looking at developing your skill sets through education to growing your careers with your current organization. And for those of you that are interested in learning more about what education opportunities are available to you through DeVry University, we encourage you to connect directly with myself or with Laura, and we will be more than happy to assist you. We will be sharing our contact information next. But DeVry University, for those that aren't familiar with what we offer, we do have certificates, associate, bachelor's, and master's degrees in the fields of technology, business, and healthcare. And in closing it up, today we've covered a lot of ground. At the beginning of the workshop, we did discuss how communication drives our plans and attitudes throughout the day. So hopefully by participating in this workshop, you're leaving with a few key takeaways that you can implement immediately to help you improve on the quality and effectiveness of your written and verbal communication. Today, we reviewed the fill in the blanks for the topic of setting your tone. We discussed how we can be more effective communicators during an age of communication overload. We introduced concepts like keep it simple and tools like PASS, and we looked at ways to improve our communication skills. So you're asking what's next? Well, you've probably heard the old adage, if you don't use it, you lose it. So we encourage you to use the tools from today and put them into practice right away. We thank each and every one of you for joining us this morning and for the great participation. We've learned so much about you all's personal styles and everything. And now we open it up the floor for any questions and comments and those winners of those Cubs versus Diamondback tickets.
Yes, thank you so much, ladies. Like you said, we covered a lot, but I think this is all, stuff that we continue to grow in, and we can always use some more information. We can always continue to be educated on better communication skills, especially in the workplace and professionally. So thank you guys so much. Let's see, we'll give it a couple minutes to see if we have, if anybody would like to unmute to give any comments or feedback or any questions. You guys totally we have a few more minutes to go ahead and have that Q&A time and engagement. But yes, as Erin and Laura said, we're going to go ahead and send out their contact info. And just as they, opened up the invitation, we highly encourage you guys to connect with them if you'd like to further the conversation, or if you just have further questions or anything like that, they would be happy to help you. Yeah, do you guys, while we wait and see if there's any other questions or anything like that trickling in, do you guys have any other closing remarks for us?
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having us. It's our pleasure always to present on these various different topics. And, we learn a lot, from the comments, right? And from you all. And so thank you everyone for participating with the comments, and we'd love to entertain any questions that you have now or later on. If you want to get in touch with us, you can always, go to the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and ask for our contact info. We're always happy to engage, on any topic, within this professional growth series. And we look forward to future presentations as well in coming months.
Yeah.
Yes, our next one in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. And before I forget too, the winner of those 2 Diamondbacks versus Cubs tickets is Bobby Zavala. So I will go ahead and send you those tickets via email to you, Bobby. And if there's any trouble, receiving them or anything like that, feel free to go ahead and reach out to us. But you should be receiving them shortly. Yeah, I don't think we have any questions or anything like that, ladies. So thank you so much again for your time and for your engagement and for your encouragement. We're super excited for the next one in a couple weeks, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.